Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Buddham saranam gacchami, Dhammam saranam gacchami, Sangham saranam gacchami, Dutiyambi Buddham saranam gacchami, Dutiyambi Dhammam saranam gacchami, Dutiyambi Sangham saranam gacchami, Tatayambi Buddham saranam gacchami, Tatayambi Dhammam saranam gacchami, Tatayambi Sangham saranam gacchami. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the positive potential I create by practicing the 6 paramitas, may I soon attain enlightenment in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the positive potential I create by practicing the 6 paramitas, may I soon attain enlightenment in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the positive potential I create by practicing the 6 paramitas, may I soon attain enlightenment in order to benefit all sentient beings. May all sentient beings have happiness and its causes. May they be free from suffering and its causes. May they never be parted from the happiness beyond suffering. May they abide in equanimity, free of bias, attachment to the near, and aversion from the far. I shall cause this. Great compassionate Buddha, please inspire me to be able to do so. Reverently, I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind, and present clouds of every types of offerings, actual and mentally transformed. I confess all of my negative actions accumulated since beginningless time, and rejoice in all the virtues of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until cyclic existence ends, and turn the wheel of Dharma for all sentient beings. I dedicate the virtues of myself and others to the great enlightenment. However innumerable all sentient beings are, I vow to save them all. However inexhaustible my delusions are, I vow to extinguish them all. However immeasurable the Dharma teachings are, I vow to master them all. However endless the Buddha's way is, I vow to follow it completely. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Tayata Gati Gati Para Sungati Bodhisattva. Tayatam gati gati parasungati buddhiso. Tayatam gati parasungati buddhiso. So now get yourself ready for some meditation. You can release the tension from the body now. Whatever tension you may have, you bring your mind inside the body and you focus on different parts of the body. For instance, from the tips of the toes all the way up your legs, then to the shoulders, down to the tips of your fingers, back up to the top of your head. As you focus on these different parts of the body, you release the tension, if there's any there, okay? If you find it difficult to release the tension just with your mind, then utilize the out breath to release the tension. Take a deep in breath and then long out breath out, okay? So now, close your eyes gently, lips gently touching, tongue resting on the upper palate inside the mouth. And like I said, bring your mind inside your body. And let's take a few moments to release whatever tension we can from inside the body. So once you've done this, scan your body again, just to see if there's any leftover tension. that you can release. And if there is, do so. And when this is complete, bring your focus now to the tip of your nose initially, and focus on the feeling of the breath as you breathe in your nose all the way into your lungs, and then back out your nose again. Breathing in and breathing out. Being here physically, as well as your breath, breathing in, breathing out. That's all we have to do physically right now. And also mentally, all we have to do is focus or place the mind onto the breath, the feeling of the breath. When the mind wanders, then replace it onto the breath. That's all you have to do mentally now. Let go of any sort of thoughts and feelings that may arise along your way as we practice. So as just alluded to, if thoughts arise during the meditation, if stories arise from the thoughts, sort of feelings or mental agitation, don't cling to it. Don't grasp at it. Also, don't try to force it away or deny it even. But gently and simply and naturally place your mind back onto your breath. Okay, so just let go of these thoughts, this mental imagery, mental beliefs, all of these types of things. Just let it go. Let them go. Focus on your breath. And also, if your mind starts to become dull, then wake it up a little bit by refocusing on the breath more brightly. So let's practice like this in silence for a little bit. I should mention also you can count the breaths from 1 to 10. A little bit of an extra technique to keep you or help you focus on your breath. Don't count past 10. And if on the way to counting towards 10, you start to get a little bit distracted, then go back to 1 at that time. Let's practice. So now we can feel pleased with ourselves, rejoice, and rejoice in the rejoicing. And let's fill ourselves with the universal loving kindness. Utilize the visualization technique of filling your whole being with the white light or the white nectar. Or if you prefer, just the feeling of the universal loving kindness is fine too. Fill yourself with so much universal loving kindness. Forgiveness and honesty, acceptance, friendship, love and kindness, compassion, non-violence and harmlessness, and all good things are included in this loving kindness. Fill yourself with so much loving kindness now that it overflows and radiates outwards, initially to your loved ones, your family, your friends, filling them with the universal loving kindness too. May they be happy, free from suffering, and be peaceful. And now also extend the loving kindness to those we may regard as strangers, those people that we're indifferent towards, whether we know them a little or not at all. Fill them with the universal loving kindness. May they be happy, free from suffering, and be peaceful. Now also include those you may regard as enemies, those people that you don't like for whatever reason, for good reason or not so good reason, and also maybe you don't really know why, just a feeling you get. Maybe you can't even think about these people without getting sort of upset a little bit. Well, now we're changing that. You're developing more and more loving kindness. Soften your heart, make you gentle, a gentleman or a gentlewoman, gentle person. Fill them with the universal loving kindness too. And may these three types of people, from our own perspective, the loved ones or friends, enemies, strangers, may they all be happy. May they be free from suffering, and may they be peaceful. Now let's extend the loving kindness, radiate it outwards, distance-wise, starting around your immediate area, to all the living beings now, not just the people. Those living beings that live on the land, some even under the land, live in the waters, the salt water, the fresh water, even things like puddles, fly through the air. Whether they're born from wombs or eggs or moisture or through transformation. In all of the different realms. So extend this loving kindness to all of these living beings throughout your whole state now, or county. All sentient beings, whether weak or strong, great or small, short or tall, seen or unseen, near or distant, born or to be born. May they all be happy, free from suffering, and be peaceful. And now further and further include throughout all of the states or counties in your entire country. to all the living beings. All the living beings can or are enlightened, can become enlightened. We are all the same this way, but we're also all the same because we are not enlightened yet. We all experience difficulties. We all have not freed our mind from ignorance, attachment, or aversion. And at the same time, we are all interrelated. And now radiate this loving kindness throughout other countries too. Initially, those that you have an affinity towards, also those that you're indifferent towards, and those that for whatever reason you are having some sort of negative feelings towards. Until your loving kindness pervades throughout all of the countries in the world, and also throughout all of the oceans and other bodies of water. Have your loving kindness pervade down to the core of the earth and to the outermost atmosphere. And this loving kindness now goes beyond this planet alone, throughout the whole solar system. And all of the solar systems throughout the galaxy. And all of the galaxies throughout the universe. Until your loving kindness pervades throughout infinite space. I know it's a hard concept to think about, infinity. But actually, I thought even when I was young, infinity and zero make more sense than all of the numbers in between. Uncomplicated, clear, bright. So now be present here and now to recite the dedication prayer. Due to this merit, may I soon attain the enlightened state of the Buddha, so that I may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious body, Chitta, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. And may the precious view of Shunyata, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. So now, water. Should always drink enough water. Very good. So what's the water like over in England? Is it different water? Does this water have an identity that says, I'm British water? And this one here says, I'm Australian water. Of course not. We people, we just put titles on things, don't we? Give it a name, give it a concept. So is water really water? You know, from its own side, it doesn't go around saying, hey, I'm water, or I'm British water, I'm Australian water. In fact, we have this, don't we? Like in a country like Australia, which is an island, you know, or a continent if you want. Actually, we say Australian waters. It's the waters sort of near our coastline. And then other countries like to own certain parts of the water, don't they? But none of this is real. It's all made up nonsense because we have the ignorance, the attachment, and the aversion. No such thing as different countries, ultimately, is there? Those borders that are put up, actually, they join, you could say they join the countries rather than separate the countries. Anyway, I'll leave that there. So we'll continue to address these questions that came in over the last year. I think we're up to about 36 or 37 now out of 50 of the quotes and the explanations of the quotes from my book, which I'm utilizing to answer these questions. And like I've said before, for sure, all the questions would be answered, but the invite is still out there. If you want more elaboration or clarifying the answers to your questions, then just let me know. And then I will do so. Okay, and then either right at the end of this part of our teachings, or there and then. Okay, I'll sort of decide there and then. And so let's do this now. Put the glasses on. Are they clean? No, they're not. No, clean enough, I think. It's always clean enough, isn't it? The glass is always clean. The window is never dirty when you're thinking about the mind and enlightened mind. Okay, so constantly recite and meditate on the Buddha Dharma. And so this actual quote came from a song that I wrote called The Solution. And you may recall when I gave some commentary on the different musicals that I'd written, the CDs, and the solution was in the universal love of the Buddha. So it's when the monks went back from the forest to seek advice from the Buddha after they sort of lost the plot, got scared a little bit. And so they went back to the Buddha, and the Buddha actually said, he didn't say go to a different place or stay here with me. He said go back to the same place. And what he said is you need to have more universal loving kindness. He alluded to that because he taught them the Metta Sutta, the Universal Loving Kindness Sutra or scripture. And then they were reciting it and meditating on it all the way back to this place in the forest near the foothills of the Himalayas. And this time they were accepted by all the different types of living beings with friendship and universal goodwill. So basically changing our ways from being self-centered, you could say, or having worries and anxiety, to being more loving and kind. And so that's really where this quote came from. And when I first started to do the Facebook stuff, when Wendy started it, and then Barbara took over from that, and so on and so forth, I gave them a bunch of quotes to put up, just one a week or two a week, something like that, in the beginning. And this, what I did was I looked into some of my songs, apart from the quotes that came from Matthew's notes from classes and other people's notes as well. I also looked into some poetry and some Dharma songs and things, just for quick access, okay? And so this was one of them. Constantly recite and meditate on the Buddha Dharma. So reciting, you can do it out loud. Obviously, it's probably not, you can't do it all the time. Your voice will get tired. So reciting, you can recite in your mind too, Just think these things. If you're thinking, Universal Loving Kindness Sutra, so may all sentient beings have happiness and so on and so forth, okay? You just have this in your mind. Have this feeling, this goodwill, this loving kindness in your mind. But also on other aspects of the Dharma. So let's say the wisdom teachings, the teachings of emptiness, even Buddha nature teachings. If you can memorize some of these, and then you can bring them to your mind at different times to practice, and then meditate on it. Okay, so meditating on the Buddha Dharma as well. Remember, Buddha is the teacher, Dharma is his teachings, but also Dharma in this sense can also mean the truth, the path to the truth. You could say also the foundation. I'll go into that in a moment. I think there's actually a quote coming up that's about that. So the foundation, the path, and the result of the path is the Dharma as well. The explanation says, we should do our very best to mindfully recite important prayers and verses, such as homage, refuge, and the like, as well as important teachings of the Buddha, and commit them to memory so that we can recall and access them at any time and anywhere. We should contemplate the meaning and develop genuine insight of these immeasurably precious teachings, and then habituate our mind with genuine insight into the meaning of the words, verses, and teachings that we are reciting. When we mindfully recite verses and teachings, we are engaging our whole being, our speech, our body, our mind. Of course, the mind is the chief, for it is the mind that will understand and realize the purpose, methods, practice of the methods, and result of the practice. Study, recite, remember, practice and share the Dharma well. And eventually you will understand and realize the unification and perfection of inseparable wisdom and method, and attain unsurpassed supreme enlightenment. People say, how long will it take to be enlightened? I can't answer that question. So what is time? We say there is no time, but in a sense there is. From a relative point of view, of course there is this. We do have a past that we can reflect on, but it's gone. There is the present, but it's fleeting. The future will arise, but when it arises, it's not the future anymore, it's the present. But these are all just titles, these are all just names, okay? So how long does it take to be enlightened or become enlightened? Depends on your practice, doesn't it? Depends on whether you understand. I'll go towards the end of this explanation here. The purpose of the practice, how well you understand that, how well you understand the methods to be put into practice, how well you put them into practice, and your practice, and how consistent you are, But also the practice, are you clinging? You cling to certain things. Even the practice you cling, if you cling to that. Eventually you even have to let go of the clinging to the Dharma practice. Okay, so it depends, doesn't it? I like to say, this is another quote as well, that, basically, if we really spent as much time contemplating the Dharma, the Buddhist teachings, and putting it into practice as we spend on our worldly stuff, maybe we're already enlightened, yeah? Maybe we could be enlightened in 5 minutes. But we're so caught up in our worldly stuff and our mental habits that we stop ourselves from being enlightened. Okay, so one of the ways to do this is to actually, put this teaching into practice. Memorize things, the prayers, and so forth, so that you can have access to them at all times. You can utilize, I alluded to in here, the 3 wisdom tools of hearing the Dharma or reading the Dharma, studying the Dharma. Then the next one is contemplating the Dharma, using your ability to investigate and analyze. That which needs to be is essential to be investigated and analyzed. And then once you come to some understanding, absorb your mind with what it is you understood or understand. 3 wisdoms or 3 wisdom tools. So I'll go back into this again. So we should do our very best to mindfully recite important prayers and verses as we do at the start of class, but also other ones too. If you have learned some other prayers or verses, sutras and so forth, from different traditions even, no problem. Then recite them every day, whether you do it silently or whether you actually do it out loud, okay? And important to commit them to memory so that you can recall and have access to them at any time, anywhere. We should contemplate the meaning and develop genuine understanding of these immeasurably precious teachings, and then habituate the mind with genuine insight into the meaning of the words, verses, and teachings that we are reciting. So that's putting the 3 wisdom tools into practice, the second paragraph there. The next paragraph is when we mindfully recite verses and teachings, we are engaging our whole being, our speech, our body, and our mind. And I go on to say, of course, the mind is the chief, for it is the mind that will understand and realize, once again, the purpose, the methods, the practice of the methods, and the result of the practice. Okay, so as we engage in this practice, we're utilizing our mind to memorize, but also to understand what it is that we're actually reciting, what it is we're thinking, so, and then utilizing the body here, mudra, maybe sort of in this position, just a moment, like that, either flat or like a lotus flower like that, and this is mudra or hand gesture or other ones if you like, and then utilizing your ability to speak, so we're using our whole being to develop the understanding. Don't do it blindly, but also don't do it attaching, clinging, grasping. And I think that'll do for that one. Yeah, the unification, where I say the unification and perfection of inseparable wisdom and method. Let's say I use the example of the 6 paramitas, the first 5 of the paramitas, generosity, morality, patience, effort, and concentration relate to the method or the means, the practice, okay? The 6th one is the wisdom, the perfection of wisdom, okay? And they unified and perfected. That means enlightenment, you know. The same can be said for the recent subject that we had commentary on, the 8 verses of thought transformation. The last, or the second half of the last verse is about the wisdom. The rest of them are methods to be put into practice, okay? You can also utilize the words, the unification and perfection of wisdom and compassion, with compassion being the method, you know. So they're inseparable, even though we talk about them as separate sometimes, to develop them, you know. That'll do. The next one is dedicate, how long have I got? 7 minutes. Dedicate all of your merits in the past, present, and future to all sentient beings. So that's an interesting one, isn't it? We can't remember them probably from the past, but we're still going to bring them to mind. You can even take this further and think about all of the living beings' merits. Dedicate all of them to the great enlightenment of all living beings, as we say in the 7th verse of the 7-limb prayer at the beginning of the class. Okay, so past, present, future, present, anything you are doing good now, dedicate to all sentient beings. And what you're going to do into the future, all the good things, dedicate that right now to all living beings. And then rejoice in the dedication. And then dedicate that rejoicing. You can see how we can gather momentum in our practice. Now, sometimes people say, oh, this is actually just like imagination. Actually, we're utilizing it, utilizing your mind and your experiences right now to train your mind, to let go of this idea of self, to purify the ignorance, attachment, and aversion. Get rid of that eventually. So utilizing it. Everything's like an illusion anyway in the world. You know, so I hear quite often people say things like, oh, if you're practicing Dharma or you're practicing this or you're doing that, you're not in the real world. But actually, it's kind of the opposite, isn't it? Because the so-called real world, with all of its politics and business and money and greed and so forth, and good stuff too, thankfully. But, you know, it's this kind of nonsense. So take your mind away from that, place it towards the Dharma and benefiting yourself and benefiting others, you know, much better, even though we have to force it a little bit, especially at the beginning, you know, until we develop more momentum in our practice, more consistency. So the explanation is very short. Whatever virtuous actions we may have completed with our body, speech, and mind throughout the infinite past, even though we may not remember them, we should dedicate to all sentient beings without exception. Likewise, whatever virtuous actions we are engaging in at present and will engage in the future, we should dedicate to all sentient beings. Share your meritorious goodness. Okay, so, and also to all sentient beings really means as well to enlightenment. So dedicate it towards your own enlightenment as well as the enlightenment of all living beings. Okay, think about that. I've mentioned it many times, and that is, if you just think of yourself, that's just one living being, isn't it? But if you think of every single living being or all sentient beings, then this is innumerable. It's like an immeasurable. This is infinite. No limit. So no limit to the results of this practice too. Okay, so that'll do for that one. Now this next one is, it's quite deep, but I think I've covered some of this already. So Dharma transcends culture and tradition. So you think about that. You know, I kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier. That's why I was joking around a bit earlier about borders and countries and identifying this water and that water. You know, so Dharma transcends culture and tradition. We tend to grasp hold of our culture, our traditions, Even within Buddhism, I practice this type, I practice that type, I believe this is this, I believe that is that, grasping hold of like concepts and things like that. But really, the Dharma goes beyond these limitations. And so what I say here is both relative and ultimate truth transcend culture and tradition. The Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path transcend culture and tradition. The result of the Dharma path, enlightenment, transcends culture and tradition. Namo Buddhaya. Okay, so this is speaking about, I mentioned before, the foundation, or you could say the ground of the Dharma, then the path, the Dharma path, and then the result of the Dharma path. So the result of the Dharma path is obviously enlightenment. And the Dharma path itself is the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. We say the Eightfold Path being the path, but actually it's the Four Noble Truths, because we must contemplate the Four Noble Truths, the truth of suffering, the truth of the cause of suffering, cessation, and then the path. So we must actually practice and follow these teachings. Okay, so that's the path we need to practice. And the foundation or the ground are the two truths. So the relative truth that we live in right now, which is reliant upon cause, condition, and effect, obviously, conditioned phenomena, mental and physical, everything's always changing, has the nature of suffering, and there's no self to be found. Okay, so this is then of course, the ultimate truth, which is the result of the path. Okay, so maybe I need to pick this one up next week a little bit. So because I've only got a minute to go. So obviously the Eightfold Path can also be known as the three higher trainings in morality, meditation, and wisdom. And the Eightfold Path being right understanding, right thoughts, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right concentration, and right mindfulness, and right concentration. Okay, so yeah, well, I'll pick this one up next week because it is quite deep and very short, small amount of words there. Quite often, these shorter teachings need more explanation. So I rejoice in your meritorious goodness, dedicated, okay, to all living beings. Practice the Dharma to the best of your ability. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya.